Hi student, this is Professor Harmony Kim. In continuation of last week, we will study long-term memory first. Loss of memory refers to as amnesia. Amnesia refers to forgetting that is caused by physical problems in the brain, such as by injury or disease. There are two types of amnesia. One is retrograde amnesia. The other one is anterograde amnesia. Retrograde amnesia is memory loss for the event that happened before the brain injury. This amnesia can be recoverable. In some cases, patients lose their ability to recall personal experiences from the last several years leading up to the accident. Anterograde amnesia is memory loss for event that happened after the physical injury. So anterograde amnesia cannot remember whatever happened to him after injury, but implicit memory is preserved in anterograde amnesia. Therefore, this patient with anterograde amnesia remember how to wash face, how to eat, how to sitting on the chair. This kind of implicit memory is preserved, but explicit memory, such as meeting new person, and then the very next day, the patient cannot remember who was he. The patient with anterograde amnesia meet the doctor every day, but he cannot remember doctor the very next day. So he keeps saying, hello, how do you do? What is your name? Again and again. Here is one web video, and I really want to show some of this video, but showing video in this class is cause some problem. So I will introduce the title of this web video so you can personally access YouTube and then you can watch this film. The title of this conference is The Neuroscience of Memory. Neuroscience of Memory, and this lady is Professor Eleanor McGuire. And he introduced one patient with anterograde amnesia. His name is HM. So she provides a conversation with the patient HM. And the question to patient with anterograde amnesia is, what do you do during a typical day? And HM replies, see, I don't remember anything. And the doctor asks, do you know what you did yesterday? And HM said, no, I don't. And ask again, how about this morning? And HM replied, I do not even remember that. Doctor keep asking, could you tell me what you had for lunch today? And HM replied, I don't know. Tell you truth, I am not. So one day, this HM, the patient name is HM, meet the doctor in the office. And in the doctor's office, there's a mirror. So HM can see his face. And he's surprised when he saw his face through the mirror. And he shouting, and then he say loudly, oh, this is not me. I do not look this old, because he cannot remember whatever happened after injury. So he kind of jailed himself in the past. Then the doctor told HM, don't worry about that. And he put aside the mirror. And HM turned to happy again. Why? Because even though HM saw himself through a mirror, he cannot remember himself appeared through the mirror because he has anterograde amnesia. That's why doctor said, don't worry, you will be okay. And HM really become happy again because he totally forgot himself reflected through the mirror. It's very worthwhile to watch this film, and it takes more than 1 hour. You need to allocate your time approximately more or less 1 hour. So, expertise have impressive memory ability. For example, professors, teachers, and they have enormous capacity of long-term memory. What is the key to have impressive memory to expertise? They are deliberate and intensive practice on a daily basis. Expertise is context specific. In other words, a person's expertise is often limited to one specific area. So, the expertise may have average level performance in other areas. For example, a classic guitar player is good at playing the music, but this guitar player might not be good at digging the ground as archaeologist. That's why expertise is context specific. Strong positive correlation between knowledge about one area and memory performance in that area. Expertise is helpful in remembering material because experts are likely to recognize the material that they must recall. So a very old professor, even though they are very old, they still hold enormous amount of information because they practice a daily base. Practice means they study daily base. Therefore, they can remember materials for a long time. Therefore, even though they hit new information related to his expert area, expertise easily capture the information. That's why expertise hold impressive memory ability. What about the memory related to yourself? Autobiographical memory. Autobiographical memory means your memory for events and issues related to yourself. Autobiographical memory include a verbal narrative, imagery about events, emotional reactions, procedural information. It provides vital part of your identity. Autobiographical memory shape your personal history and your self-concept. Without autobiographical memory, how can you identify you as yourself? You already have lots of autobiographical memory. For example, you can remember, you can retrieve what happened on your birthday party or on your graduation date, and you remember how your parents treat you with what kind of emotion, and you know how to drive because it is you who drive a car. Then let's think about how much you accurately remember for autobiographical memory. Does your record match the actual event that happened? Or does it distort the event? So many events happened around you, and you have lots of autobiographical memory. But what about the accuracy to your autobiographical memory? When we study encoding and retrieving in long-term memory, the dependent variable is the number of items correctly recorded. In other words, a quantity-oriented approach to long-term memory. How do you remember common ordinary event? You will use a strategy called schema. Schema means a mental concept which informs of what to expect from a variety of experience. Schema is a representation of memory in the form of an outline or model. A schema is set by an active organization of past experience. Schema consists of general knowledge or expectation, which is distilled from your past experiences with someone or something. Schema is a stored framework or body of knowledge about some topic. You can use the term script or manuscript as a synonym of schema. The brain creates and uses schema as a shortcut to make future encounters with a similar situation easier to navigate. For example, a young child knows that a horse is large, has 4 legs and a tail. So, this child develops a schema for a horse. When she encounters a cow for the first time, this young child might initially call it a horse because it fits in with her schema for the characteristics of a horse, such as it has a large animal that has hair, 4 legs, and a tail. Once she is told that this is a different animal called a cow, she will modify her existing schema for a horse and create a new schema for a cow. This young girl encounters a miniature horse for the first time and mistakenly identifies it as a dog. Her parents explain to her that the animal is actually a very small type of a horse, so the little girl must this time modify her existing schema for horses. The little girl now realized that while some horses are very large animals, other horses can be very small. Through her new experiences, her existing schemas are modified and new information is learned. If you think back when you were young, you also use schema when you learn items or animals. Another characteristic of autobiographical memory is consistency bias. Consistency bias refers to exaggerating the consistency between past feeling and belief and current viewpoint. In other words, the way you were depends on the way you are. For example, suppose someone made good money and become a wealthy person now, but he was poor and he was not well educated at young age. However, this person described himself as well-educated member in high society when he introduced himself at present. So people tend to construct their previous emotions and values so that they would be consistent with their current emotion and values. And people sometimes underestimate how much they have changed throughout their lives. Schemas can influence our memories of the past so that people seem more familiar to their present feeling, belief, and actions. Let's examine whether our memory is consistent with the actual event for our lives. I'm going to introduce source monitoring and reality monitoring. So let's monitor our long-term memory. First, source monitoring. Source monitoring identifies the origin of a particular memory. Mostly, you do not spontaneously monitor the source of our memories. Rather, wishful thinking bias leads us to make mistakes in source monitoring. And source monitoring errors occur at a social level, not at the individual level. Here is the case showing the mistake in source monitoring take place. In 2003, when President George W. Bush was trying to provide justification for starting the Iraq War, in his State of the Union address in early 2003, President Bush discussed one important reason to justify invading Iraq. Specifically, he announced that Iraq was negotiating with an African country to buy uranium. Uranium is an ingredient used in making nuclear power weapons. 6 months later, the public learned that this claim was based on clearly falsified document from Niger. Niger is a country in West Central Africa. Also, the CIA claimed that their agent had tried to warn the President Bush that the information from Niger was false. So the country Niger never ever tried to buy uranium to produce nuclear weapons. Furthermore, President Bush claimed that this State of the Union address had been cleared by the CIA. Unfortunately, several different errors in source monitoring on the uranium question apparently helped to push the United States into an expensive, destructive war that has killed thousands of US military troops and hundreds of thousands of Iraqi individuals. So the accuracy of information must be monitored by government agency, the media, and corporation executives so that it can limit the frequency and size of source monitoring errors. What is reality monitoring? Reality monitoring examines a problem called source monitoring errors. Reality monitoring tries to identify whether an event really occurred or whether you actually imagine this event. You might think that you told your friend that an upcoming event had been cancelled. In reality, you had debated whether to call your friends or send them a message, and you never actually conveyed that message. This might happen to you also. You think that you have done, but actually not. So, in that context, reality monitoring is required to verify the event really take place or not. In a representative study about reality monitoring, college students saw a series of familiar objects such as a pencil. The students performed breaking a pencil for half of the object. So maybe there's a bunch of pencils and then you perform breaking a pencil for half of the bundle of pencils. For the remaining half of the object, the students were instructed to imagine themselves performing a specific action without actually doing anything to the object. 1 week later, the students saw photos of some of the completed actions such as a broken pencil. And also, another week after that, the students were instructed to indicate whether they had actually performed each action. If some students had not seen a photo of the completed action, fewer than 10% were confident that they had completed the action. However, when they had seen the relevant photo 3 times, 25% of students were confident that they had actually completed this action. People tend to confuse the product of perceptual experience with the product of imagination. People think that they've done conceptually, but not actually. So when President Ronald Reagan publicly recounted a story about an act of heroism by U.S. pilot, no record of it could be found by reporters. But Reagan's story holds a resemblance to a scene from a 1940s war movie called A Wing and a Prayer. If there is a failure in reality monitoring, that indicates false memory. One of the 5 precepts in Buddhism is do not tell a lie. According to source monitoring and reality monitoring, people seldom realize that they are telling lies. So awareness is really important. Mental practice, such as meditation, has enormous power to give you awareness and awakened so that you can clarify the event was held actually by way of source monitoring and reality monitoring. Let's apply schema, source monitoring, reality monitoring to eyewitness testimony. Memory schema can alter a witness's testimony. Faulty source monitoring can lead to errors in eyewitness testimony. How inaccuracy can arise when people are given misleading information after the event that they had witnessed. We call this post-event misinformation effect. Post-event misinformation effect informs that people mistakenly recall the misleading information. Why people has misinformation effect? Because of retroactive interference. Retroactive interference means trouble recalling old material because some recent learned new material keeps interfering with old memories. Suppose that an eyewitness saw a crime scene and then a lawyer supplied some misinformation while asking a question. Later on, the eyewitness may have trouble remembering the event because the new misinformation provided by lawyer create retroactive interference. Let's look at the case of Gary Graham. Gary Graham was a suspect in the murder of Bobby Lambert. There was no convincing evidence for Graham's guilt, nothing like DNA or fingerprint evidence. When Graham came to trial, jury members were informed that Graham had a pistol similar to one that had shot Lambert. They were not told that the Houston police had concluded that it was not the same pistol. Furthermore, 8 eyewitnesses had seen the killer near the store, but only one of them identified Graham as the killer. Graham's face was sealed by the eyewitness testimony of one woman. This woman testified that she had seen his face at night for about 3 seconds from a distance of about 30 feet. Graham's case was never reviewed. Was Gary Graham genuinely guilty? We will never know because he was executed on June 22, 2000. So reports like this one have led psychologists to question the validity of eyewitness testimony. Many errors take place in eyewitness testimony. Many errors in eyewitness testimony can be traced to incorrect information. In the post-event misinformation effect, people first view an event. Then they are given misleading information about the event. Later on, they mistakenly recall the misleading information rather than the event they actually saw. The research on the misinformation effect emphasizes the active, constructive nature of memory. Cognitive processes are active rather than passive. Therefore, cognitive process construct something which can be mistakenly recalled, the misleading information. The constructive approach to memory emphasizes that people construct knowledge by integrating what we know. As a result, our understanding of an event or a topic is coherent and it makes sense. People construct a memory by blending information from a variety of sources. Let's see the example of misinformation effect. Psychologists show participants a series of slides. In this sequence, a sport car stopped at an intersection, and then it turned and hit a pedestrian with a yield sign at the intersection. Half of the participants saw a slide with a yield sign at the intersection. The other half saw a stop sign at the intersection. 20 minutes to 1 week after the participant had seen the slide, they answered a question about the details of the accident. A question contained information that was either consistent with a detail in the original slide series or inconsistent with that detail. In other words, the first group of people who had seen the yield sign were asked, "Did any car pass the red Ford while it was stopped at the yield sign?" Their responses were consistent because the original scene they saw yield sign, and 20 minutes to 1 week after, the participant also saw the slide, and then they have been asked, "Did another car pass the red Ford while it was stopped at the yield sign?" It's kind of a consistent yield sign. Their responses were consistent. A second group of people were asked, "Did another car pass the red Ford while it was stopped at the stop sign?" And their response was inconsistent. So, they were asked to select which slide they had previously seen. And people who had seen the inconsistent information were much less accurate than people in the other condition. They often selected a sign on the basis of the information in the questionnaire rather than the original slide. Many studies replicated the detrimental effects of misleading post-event information. The post-event information in the inconsistent information condition encourages people to create a mental image of a stop sign. During testing, they had trouble deciding which of the two images, either the stop sign or the yield sign, they had actually seen in the original slide series. So people construct a memory by blending information from a variety of sources. There are some factors influencing the accuracy of eyewitness testimony. One factor affects the accuracy of eyewitness testimony is people may create memories that are consistent with their schema. Another factor is people may make errors in source monitoring, or post-event misinformation may distort people's recall. So these are three potential problems in eyewitness testimony. Thanks to advanced technology such as CC camera, or you can even take a video record by your cellular phone, so more and more eyewitness testimony can be improved with lots of mechanical evidence. But still, we can study eyewitness testimony to reflect human memory system. Eyewitnesses make more errors as follow. If people saw a crime committed during a stressful circumstance, when someone was carrying a weapon, so this eyewitness is in enormous stressful condition, then they can make error. When there is a long delay between the original event and the time of testimony, usually in courthouse, some criminal case can open several months later than the original event. In the meantime, eyewitnesses have their own life and then they build new memories from their activity. Therefore, their memory in several months ago might fade away. So as time passes, recall accuracy decreases. So when there is a long delay in eyewitness testimony allows additional opportunities for contamination from the post-event misinformation. If the misinformation is plausible, such as a stop sign is just as plausible as a yield sign, then people say that an event occurred in their own life if the event seems consistent with other similar experiences. So these are the contexts in which eyewitnesses make more errors. So if people saw a crime committed during a stressful circumstances, for example, when people was carrying a weapon, about 85% of eyewitnesses were aware of it, not 100% of eyewitnesses. Also, if there is social pressure, more errors can happen. when someone pressured them to provide a specific answer. For example, if a lawyer asks, exactly when did you first see the suspect? And the eyewitness need to answer. Therefore, they can make error. However, when people are allowed to report an event in their own words, the testimony is more accurate. So the eyewitness might not be pushed, but if they can have a chance to report an event in their own word, the testimony is more accurately described rather than just simply answer to the lawyer's question. Also, if eyewitnesses have previously been given positive feedback, then they can simply answer okay. For example, the lawyer asks, Gary Graham is a suspect in the murder because he had a pistol on his hand, right? Then eyewitnesses usually say yes or okay. But rather than okay, eyewitness, can you describe the scene you saw? Then this eyewitness describe what she saw. Then from her description, maybe lawyers or jury might catch some other important missing information. Therefore, people's confidence about their eyewitness testimony is not strongly correlated with the accuracy of their testimony. Jury members are more likely to believe a confident eyewitness than an uncertain one. Such as, if eyewitnesses say, I'm sure I can testify the criminal scene because I clearly saw, then jury members more likely to believe the eyewitness testimony. However, the eyewitnesses say, I am not quite sure how accurately I can remember the criminal scene. Then jury members have a doubt on eyewitness testimony. However, the research shows that a confident eyewitness is not necessarily an accurate eyewitness, because no evidence shows that long-term memory is permanent and forgetting is just a problem of retrieval. Does long-term memory for information improve when repeated rehearsal? The answer is no. When you transfer short-term memory to long-term memory, you will use repeated rehearsal, so you can build up long-term memory. However, does long-term memory for information improve when repeated rehearsal? The answer is no. Information rehearsed in the same shallow way over and over is remembered in the same shallow way. So, people need to use diversity and distribute method to have better long-term memory. So human memory can be remarkably fragile and even inventive. False memories can be created relatively easily in the laboratory and can have a lasting effect on behavior. I mentioned that people need to use diversity and distribute to improve long-term memory. What is the meaning of diversity? Diversity is the means to encode the material in a slightly different way in each occasion. Diversity creates multiple interrelated memory records. Distribute is a spacing the repetition of to-be-remembered information over time. Do not cram and jam the event. Rather, you can distribute, you can put the space and distribute event and repeat to-be-remembered information over time. Inserting space between repetition increases likelihood of diversification. Mnemonic using imagery. Mnemonic means mental strategies designed to improve long-term memory. Some mnemonic emphasize mental imagery. We mentally represent objects, action, or ideas that are not physically present. Your mind can imagine something. This imagery can enhance people's memory. There are several kinds of imagery: auditory imagery, olfactory imagery, but visual imagery can be a powerful strategy for enhancing memory. Imagery is especially effective when the items that must be recalled are shown interacting with each other. Therefore, interacting visual image is especially helpful if the image is bizarre, because visualization mnemonics are motivating and interesting. This mnemonic technique is used for meditation practice or even chanting in the shrine, which motivates auditory mnemonics. Or once you put some physical object and then try to build up visual mnemonics, even though you cannot see that physical object. That is one kind of a technique to cultivate meditation practice. So, deep processing is required to improve long-term memory. Self-reference encourages deep processing. People are more likely to recall words that apply to themselves compared to the words that do not apply to themselves. So self-reference encourages deep processing. 3 basic codes for encoding process. We can use visual characteristic, auditory characteristic, and semantic characteristic. And one more category to deepen the level of processing is self-reference instruction. In addition to these 3 characteristics, the first category, self-reference instruction, better recall than all the other 3 tasks, such as visual, auditory, and semantic characteristics. Self-reference instruction more likely to recall a word that does apply to themselves. I mentioned that people are more likely to recall words that apply to themselves compared to words that do not apply. Once you engage yourself to certain event, you do have a better memory and you want to hold and keep that information in your long-term memory. So engaging yourself, imagine yourself using the object, that enhance long-term memory. So, wide variety of situations can enhance memory. Self-reference effect is effective strategy for remembering. But the effectiveness of Any encoding manipulation will depend on what kind of information or what cues, CUES, are required for connecting to be remembered input and other information in memory. People have a better recall if the context during retrieval similar to the context during encoding. This is called context-dependent memory, transfer appropriate processing, reinstatement of context. Context-dependent memory turns out relatively accurate if people heard the story and answered the question in the same language. Another example of a context-dependent memory is maybe you live in a two-story house and you are in the top floor of your house and you suddenly think that you want to go to the first floor to do something in your home. And then when you go down to the first floor and you forgot what you need to do. So you return to the second floor and then you immediately, okay, I was trying to do this on the first floor. And then you go down again and then at the time you can commit. You can execute what you plan to do. In other words, when you go down to the first floor, you cannot recall what you need. After returning to the second floor, you recall instantly. This is the example of encoding specificity principle. In other words, the effectiveness of retrieval cues depending on the extent to which they match the specifics of the to-be-remembered material. So, the second floor is more familiar, the cue to the to-be-remembered material. Therefore, on the first floor, you might not retrieve what you want to do, but on second floor, the similar cue to the to-be-remembered material so that the memories will be accessed more likely. Encoding specificity is strong in real life, long delay situation. For example, when smelling a particular incense called pine tree, instantly you can transport yourself back to the scene of Buddhist temple. Context-dependent remembering is better memory in the same environmental context. Also, this context is not limited to the space or location. Also, this context-dependent remembering matches your internal state, your emotion, your mood. So when you see nice cocktail juice, then maybe your mood already in Hawaii. Context-dependent remembering depends on mental context more than physical context. So, encoding specificity principle may depend on how similar the two environments feel rather than how similar they look. Again, encoding specificity depends on mental context more than physical context. So let's apply what you learn from memory to Buddhist meditation. I'm going to introduce element meditation. You might be familiar with samatha meditation and pursuing for the serenity of the mind, tranquility of the mind, induce the practitioners to contemplate certain meditation object. For example, mindfulness of breathing is one example. In addition to mindfulness of breathing meditation, there is another meditation technique called Ten Kazina, element meditation. This element meditation or Kazina meditation is another example of samatha meditation. In Majjhima Nikaya, 10 kazinas are described as meditation object to reach the perfection of direct knowledge. In Samgiti Sutta of Digha Nikaya, 10 kazinas are enumerated in earth, water, fire, wind, blue, yellow, red, white, space, and consciousness. And they are regarded as the object for the attainment of jhana, absorption, or advanced mental state. In Anguttara Nikaya, 10 kajina is described as the ultimate goal to attain, and the twin miracle illustrate manifestation of the jhana, this advanced mental state, by means of concentration of the fire and water kazinas. What is twin miracle? This statue is located in museum in France, and this statue you can see the Buddha, and then you can see this part, the simultaneous manifestation of the fire, and under the Buddha's feet you can see simultaneous manifestation of water. So fire and water emerge from the shoulder and feet respectively. The fire can be seen to emerge from the Buddha's shoulders, whereas water flows from his lower body. The background of twin miracle is the Buddha's disciples were indulged with committing supernormal power. So they can jump on the tree, and then they can fly in the air, and they enjoy themselves with supernormal power. But Buddha clearly stated that do not engage in supernormal power even though you equipped with that capacity. But disciples ignore Buddha's advice because they so enjoy committing supernormal power. The Buddha will not teach them in different way. So the Buddha transformed his body completely into fire and water. And disciples saw that situation. After that, the Buddha's disciple never ever commit supernormal power again. In other words, human body is composed of 4 great elements. Fire and water are the element among 4 great elements. So 10 kajina include 4 great elements. And these 4 great elements, such as fire, water, they act as a concentration object. How these 10 kajina element meditation can transform mentality to jhana, absorption. Kajina meditation was practiced in both Buddhist and Brahmanic circle. So Kajina meditation in Buddhism was developed under the influence of Brahmanism. Actually, there is slight difference between Buddhism and Brahmanism in terms of interpreting Kajina meditation. The etymology of Kajina means all, complete, whole, and implies a non-dual totality that is Brahman. According to Brahminic cosmology, Brahminic thinkers believe that cosmology provides the path of liberation. Therefore, they believed and practicing an increasing level of meditation, such as starting from earth and water to fire and space, and this make it possible to travel through the higher levels of the cosmos by way of practitioners' jhanic experience. So it is stated that cosmology provides the theoretical background to meditation in all the early Brahminic tracts on meditation. And 10 kajinas were accepted as meditation objects. Cosmology provides the theoretical background to meditation in the early Brahminic tracts on meditation. So, the cosmological thought of early Brahmanism provides the conceptual background of Kajina meditation. In Buddhism, even the practitioner engaged in Kajina meditation, in the process of practice, the Buddha suggests to let Kajina go, which is different from Brahmanism. Brahmanism keep holding this element, but Buddhism just use this Kajina meditation as the means, method, skillful means to transform mental state to advanced level. In the book named Visuddhimagga, detailed process of engaging in 10 kajina, and I will introduce detailed method next time. Here's a quiz. Does long-term memory for information improve when repeated rehearsal? This is more like for short-term memory. Maybe repeated rehearsal might not be effective for long-term memory. What is it called memory loss for event that happened before the brain injury? Anterograde amnesia, retrograde amnesia, self-reference amnesia, schemata amnesia? You know this answer. If there is a social pressure, eyewitness make more error. Is it true or false? So you can answer either true or false. You will send the answer of 3 quiz to my email address. Some students just skip writing last name, comma, followed by first name. In that case, I cannot count the student's attendance because I cannot see the name. So writing your official name is significant. Otherwise, you might miss the attendance. And after writing your name, 3 quiz answers are followed. The due date of this assignment is June 2nd, Sunday midnight. This is the end of the lecture.